All right, what is up, guys? We're back. We're finally here for the rest of the season, once a week. Already, we had an upset already. Not even into week one. Not even in this country. We had an upset. So that's FSU Georgia Tech. We're gonna talk about that. Gonna talk about if FSU still has a chance. We're gonna talk about finally the games that are coming up this week, the ranked games, if we have any upset picks or not. With that said, Alec and Trent, what's up, guys?
Week one's here. Week
Good.
zero's far, far away, right, Alec?
I'm sure Alec wants to take off that jersey. I'm surprised you're wearing that thing today, man, to be honest
Well,
with
I watched it, so
you. Um,
I got all the bad juju out.
Yeah.
all right, Alec, I'll start with you, man. Look, this game was played in Ireland. We all talked about last week how Haynes King was a pretty good quarterback. I mean, we all thought it would be somewhat close, but none of us thought that they would actually lose. We all know the story, right? Mike Norvell brought in his prize quarterback and DJ after he lost his quarterback last year to the draft. Got a pretty hefty compensation, and safe to say, man, he stunk up the bed. Not to say that the running game wasn't great either, but this is a game that, quite honestly, every FSU fan thought they were going to win, and they didn't. So I'll leave that to you, Alec. What do you think, man?
Well, there's a lot of things that went bad. All the things that needed to happen for us to lose that game happened. I can count a million different opportunities that we blew. I think overall, the main themes that contributed to our loss is uh, failure on the coaching level as far as play calling specifically. It's something that I've given Mike Norvell credit for throughout his coaching tenure at FSU. He's pretty crafty play caller, and the way that the game went was we had our best drives of the game on our first drive of the game and the last drive of the game. Everything in between was pretty hard to watch. I think we ran for just under 100 yards over the game, and about 60 or 70 of those yards came on the first drive. So after that drive, where we ran right down the field, we barely threw the ball, scored no problem. I was jumping up and down and thinking, here we go again. And then, when the defense came out on the field, they were getting blown up just like we were blowing them up. And they went down and scored. And something happened after that first drive. Georgia Tech made some sort of adjustment, and for the rest of the game, they had five, six, seven guys in the box, and it was just a failure on the play calling level to not be able to see that. Not to we every time we tried to run the ball, I think one like our long we didn't have many long runs after that. Short passes to get around a blitz, stuff like that. Our O line was getting blown up. And what I saw out of DJ was that when he had time to make throws and get a good read, he was able to do that. And he's getting a lot of criticism. On the last drive of the game, he drove us down the field, converted multiple fourth downs, made great passes, got us in a position to score, and ultimately we did. But it wasn't a phenomenal performance by him. I don't know what to expect out of him for the rest of the year. There's a couple plays downfield that we may have had a guy open and the ball wasn't properly placed, or um, you know, bad reads where we had a guy open and he threw it to a guy who was in coverage. And I don't know if it's just him getting used to the playbook. Obviously, we had Jordan Travis, who was in this system for 3 years and pretty familiar with where everybody has to be. So going from that to this, I guess there's some growing pains, but I could really talk about it. One thing that I really wanted to focus on was even at the end of the game, after we scored and Georgia Tech got the ball, which by the way, was a really wild fourth quarter. There was only two offensive drives, one for us and one for them, for the entire fourth quarter. So we had an 8 minute drive, they had like a 6 minute drive, and that was the game. And when they got the ball back, they drove down the field. We got a crazy gift from God, botched snap, where it took them 10, 15 yards back and out of field goal range. And it's third down and long, and all we had to do was just kind of keep them tight and not give them too many yards. And we gave up like 10, 15 yards on that play, set them up for a field goal to win the game. So We had so many opportunities for it not to happen, and we blew all those opportunities. It's a tough game for a fan. You know, you're the only team who's on TV, the whole country's watching. And coming off of last year, you know, we hadn't lost a lot over these last 2 years, and a lot of people were waiting for us to finally, you know, have something to laugh about, and you know, everybody got it. It was the story of the week. So, you know, we'll see how the team responds. As far as, you know, how the rest of the season looks, I don't think that we are dead, but I really don't know if we're alive in the race either. It's just kind of like I have to see what we do
Yeah.
on Monday.
Well,
Um,
we'll get to that in a second. Trent, quickly, look, uh, not mention DJ made some big fourth down conversions. He doesn't complete those
Two.
back-to-back fourth down
Ooh.
conversions. This game could have been really out of hand. And there was also a fumble that FSU forced that they didn't get back. That could have changed the whole game.
Hmm.
There was a lot of mistakes FSU did, but I also don't want to take away from Georgia Tech. They played really an unbelievable game. A lot of credit to that coach. He had a great game plan, and that defense was pretty damn good, man. They played well enough to win, obviously. Um, it's a disappointing loss for FSU considering, you know, we all talked about last week about how DJ wasn't really what he lived up to as a number one high school prospect, but I still think he's good enough to win this game. But anyways, Trent, what are your thoughts on this, man?
So I'm going to try my best to organize my thoughts after watching this game. But I mean, to start, I think you hit the nail in the coffin. I think Georgia Tech isn't getting enough credit. People can talk down on FSU all they want, but I think Georgia Tech really surprised a lot of people. Haynes King is a gamer. I think everybody saw that during the game. People saw it last year. Jamal Haynes is an absolute playmaker in the backfield. He made a couple FSU defenders just like just broke their ankles. I mean, but he was making plays all game long. So I was very impressed and also surprised at how much Georgia Tech dominated in the trenches, both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. I mean, Florida State has four defensive or NFL ready defensive linemen, and they got stumped. I mean, they got stumped. And it's not because I don't think it's because FSU's defensive linemen underperformed, but maybe they did a little, but that's credit to Georgia Tech's offensive line. They got a lot of push on their offensive line, way more than I thought that we'd see. And I think you got to tip your cap to them. Now, going to FSU, I mean, DJ kind of looked like how he's looked the last few years, up and down. I said in the last pod that the last thing that Florida State can do in this game is become one dimensional, and we saw that, and that was the death of them. We saw after the first drive, which obviously both teams' first drives were scripted, and those are the best drives of the game. But Florida State, after the first drive, Georgia Tech started loading the box up, like Alex said, and it became very difficult for them to move the ball. And that's you can't be one dimensional, not anymore, not in this landscape of college football. So I don't know if it's a Mike issue in terms of trusting DJ to open up the playbook, get the ball downfield a little bit. Um, I'm going to go ahead and trust Mike Norvell that he knows what he's doing because we've seen him do it the last few years. That if he doesn't trust DJ, there's a reason he does not trust DJ. But it was very similar to the game we saw last year where UM played Florida State and Emory Williams came in to start the game, true freshman quarterback, first game. And the game plan was almost the same as what you saw FSU did against Georgia Tech. It was very short, very conservative, didn't open it up, not a lot of plays downfield, and that was simply because of a lack of trust. And I think that's what happened with Florida State.
I will
I don't want
say,
to say
yeah,
that they're out yet because I think there's a lot of football left to be played, and then there's still a lot of talent on that roster. Um, but in order for that to happen, I really think that they got to start opening it up on
yeah.
offense, whether it's with DJ or Croman Hoke or with the Glennaissance, whoever it is. Because that type of offense and that lack of trust is not going to get them a lot of wins. Not not
You
not anymore.
well said. I will say this, man. If Norvell doesn't trust a third-year quarterback, which he put a lot of money to get, they have bigger problems, man.
Fifth year.
Yeah, this year. Number two, I don't think FSU's hopes of making the playoff is by far even close to over.
Mhm.
Uh, from past experience, I think we see a lot of like big upsets in week one. And quite honestly, as the season goes on and if your team plays well, a lot of the committee usually doesn't really even remember what happened in week 0, week 1. So is it a bad loss? Sure. Georgia Tech could be ranked, which would help FSU down the line. But look, man, there's a lot of big games for FSU coming up. Obviously, they would probably have to. I wouldn't even say they would have to win out, but they can't lose more than 2 games. But they're gonna have to win some really big games on the road as well. So I don't think their chances are over. I also do think that them not getting in last year definitely helps them a little bit to make up for what happened. But that's just the way I see it. But Alec, quick thoughts on that, man.
No, I agree. I was saying it earlier. I mean, we have to see something. There's been a big drop from what our team looked like last year to what we looked like in this first game. We kind of looked like how we looked in the ACC championship game and the Florida game when we didn't have Jordan Travis and we had to
Yeah.
really, really fight to get the win. I kind of had flashbacks of that, but I'm really glad you guys did focus on Georgia Tech because it was something that I really wanted to talk about. And, later on in the year, we'll see how they play out. But and I was so impressed how physical they were. I mean, they were really dominating us on both ends of the field. Great play calling. They brought in a new DC who was like a descendant of Mike Elko, who is now the head coach at Texas A&M. And last year they had one of the worst run defenses in the country. So the fact that they came out and completely shut down our run for 95% of the game, they definitely deserve a lot of credit. I think they're going to be a team that is going to do great things this year.
Yeah. All right. With that said, we're gonna move on to pretty big game this week. Really, it's a year in the making. We've been waiting for this for a while. We haven't seen this matchup in a while. That is obviously the Hurricanes going into Gainesville to play the Gators. Look, last pod we kind of ripped the Gators for their win total. Not because of the team, more so because of their tough ass schedule they have. It's probably the toughest schedule I've seen in a long, long time. With all that said, um, I want to flat out say I don't think that the Gators are going to beat UM. I think Cam Ward is going to be the difference here. But I will say this: it would not shock me if it's less than 3 points. Alec has mentioned it numerous times that that environment is one of the toughest environments in football. It's week 1. Uh, Gators are going to think they're going to have life. They're 0-0. They're going to play a lot harder. I think it's going to be a really, really tough game. I do think that they will come out with a win. Like I said, I think Cam Ward's going to be the difference, but it's not going to be easy. And quite honestly, I can't wait to hear what Trent has to say on this one, man.
Well, the spread's 2.5 for
It's very,
Miami.
yeah.
So, in other words, this game's a toss-up. Um, Look, I've been saying this since day one, since we started this pod. I don't know what team is going to show up in orange and orange and green. I never know what team's going to show up week in and week out. They could be good, they could be bad. You just never know. I think on paper, I really do like Miami's roster on paper, especially compared to the Gators. I mean, on paper, with Ward and Martinez and Restrepo and George and Sam Brown and Ruben Bay, and I go on and on and on. I mean, just stars, or maybe not stars, but a lot of talented players on their roster. I mean, their offensive line is solid. Their defensive line is very good this year. Do I trust it? I can't say I do. And like Alec has mentioned, the swamp is no joke, especially not in week 1. I think it's an environment that a lot of these guys are just not used to and have never experienced. You can try to replicate it and practice all you want, but it's not the same. Um, my my prediction is going to be Florida, and I would not be surprised if either team wins, but I'm going to pick Florida, and I'm going to give them the home field edge. If this game was in Miami, I would pick Miami. I just don't trust Miami to go into Florida. I have a lot of trust issues with this team, as you can imagine. I don't trust them to go into the swamp with a packed house as loud as it's going to be and to go in and pull out a win. I just haven't seen that. As a Miami fan, I haven't seen them go into a road environment like that and come out with a win. I mean, it rarely happens. So I'm going to go ahead with history here and pick Florida. That being said, at the same time, in my eyes, there's no excuse for them to lose this game because they are a better team. I think Cam Ward is a big difference over Graham Mertz. I don't think Graham Mertz is anything spectacular. To me, he's a very mid quarterback. Cam Ward is obviously uber talented. can create outside of the pocket, is a very dynamic quarterback. On top of that, with all the weapons he has, and now Damian Martinez and Fletcher behind him, it makes no sense for them to be able to not be able to put up points in this game. Whereas I don't know how much Mertz can put up points. I think that if Miami's defense can pressure Mertz and get to Mertz, they have obviously four very good defensive ends and Ruben Bain and Tyler Barron and Elijah Alston and Akeem Mesidor. If they can get into the pocket and disrupt Mertz, it's going to be very, very hard for Florida to move the ball. And if I'm being honest, I think that is going to be the key to the game is how much pressure they can get on Mertz. I don't know if Montreal Johnson is playing. Alec, I don't know if you have any insight to that. The last I checked, he still is questionable. I don't know if he's playing. I think that's a big injury or big potential loss for Florida. But I got trust issues, and because of that, my gut says Florida, so I'm going to go with Florida.
Yeah. Look, man, we appreciate the honesty here. A lot of fans can't do that. It's a national title or bust every year, but realistically, I think that's a very good take. And you're completely right, man. In this environment, it is very, very tough. We saw what Florida did last year to Utah. They went in there, everyone thought Utah was going to stomp the Gators, and guess what? They won. Alec, what do you think, man?
Just about Montreal Johnson, I don't know other than what I'm looking at right here, but it says that 4 days ago they saw him running on a treadmill and doing injury rehab workouts. That doesn't sound like he'd be ready to play, but in
Not very encouraging.
classic college football fashion, for a team to kind of hide a player and then bring him out to start and fire up the fans. So who knows? That's definitely a big part because he had a phenomenal season last year, and he's going to be, I think, one of the higher rushers in SEC this year, considering that the Napier offense is like uh, pretty run heavy, and they're going to have to rely on that. I I pretty much all this preseason, I've been looking at this game and thinking that Florida is like a secret team to win this game. Everybody's overlooking them. Kind of piggybacking off of what Trent said, if the teams that they're supposed to be in the eyes of the media and the eyes of the fans show out on the field, then Miami should win this game. Uh, but we don't know. It's week one. We saw last week with FSU Georgia Tech. You have no idea until you get on the field. And in previous years, I've been inclined to pick the Gators at home, even when they maybe don't have as much of a chance to win a game. They had a big win over Tennessee last year at home. I was at that game. They beat obviously Utah a couple years ago at home, defying the odds. The fact that this is a 2.5 point spread is, I think it's, indicative that Vegas understands that this is a rivalry game. It's going to be a closer game than maybe people expect. I think the 2.5 is fair. I think it's going to be a shootout like it has been over these last couple times they've played. The thing with obviously Miami star-studded and talented. I talked a lot about them on the podcast last week. I didn't really get to talk about Florida as much, but people look at Florida and they think they're a weak team because when they match up against Georgia and Texas and all these teams that have to play, but they're really talented team. I mean, I think in the ESPN power ranking, they are a higher, more powerful ranked team than Miami. And I think in the talent that they have, as far as 4-star, 5-star recruits, I think it's somewhere in line with where Miami is as far as the talent they have on the team. So the talent's going to match up. It's going to come down to coaching, and it's Napier's third year. It's Mario's third year. They're both, in this position where this is a make or break game for them. Um, I'm going to stick with my pick and go with the Gators as well. Um, the home field is a huge thing, and I don't want to feed a fed horse here. I know Trent was talking about it as well, but the there's something different about that stadium. And considering that's the first game of the year and not the eighth game of the year, something like that, it's going to be the wildest that it can be.
Yeah.
And obviously, both teams fans are going to show out. But I just think that Florida has been building on this offense. Mertz did relatively well last year um, compared to what people were expecting out of them. They brought in a transfer from Wisconsin, Shamir Dyke, who was a receiver for Mertz when he was at Wisconsin. Then Mertz came to Florida. Then he transferred to Florida as well. And I think that he's like their top receiver on the depth chart. So, maybe they could utilize that weapon. I just don't know enough about Miami. I, I'm basically copying everything that Trent said. I think we're on the same page on this one. Um, I would not be surprised if Miami won this game, but my gut's telling me the Gators because
I will say this one last thing. I agree with everything you guys said. Don't blame you. I would be in the same boat as you as well if they had this roster last year. But Cam Ward proved to me that at Washington State can go into these type of environments and win these type of games. He is a single-handedly reason why I'm taking UM. I think he's one of the five best quarterbacks in college. I think he will get it done. I think when they need a play, he'll make it. If it weren't for him, I would choose the Gators too. I think Cam Ward is that good, and I think big time players make big time plays, and that's what I expect for him to do on Saturday, man. So
So,
Trent, go
so
ahead.
Alec mentioned Florida's receivers, and I think that's important because, like he said, Dyke is one receiver, Elijah Badger is another receiver, and Eugene Wilson is the third receiver. All those guys are good veteran receivers. Like they are very talented receivers. And on the contrary, Miami's defensive backs are young and inexperienced, with the exception of Mish Powell, the transfer from Washington, and Daryl Porter, who was at Miami last year and West Virginia before that. You're going to see guys like OJ Romanique, who is a true freshman. Saquon Patterson is a true freshman. Jaden Harris, who is a little to no experience defensive back for Miami. You're going to see a lot of guys that have not played, especially in a game like this in defensive secondary for Miami, which is why I really think it is vital, vital, vital that Miami is able to create pressure on Mertz and not even allow them to get the ball downfield because if they can't get to Mertz and he has time to throw,
He will
these
make
veteran
those throws.
receivers could have a very, very good time with the inexperience that Miami has in their secondary. So that is my key watch for the game is to see that Florida offensive line versus Miami defensive line battle.
All right, well said, guys. All right, let's get into some of the games of the week here. That is Clemson going to Georgia. We talked about it last week. Dabo Sweeney's stubbornness to go into the portal and pay NIL money to make his roster better and stick with his guys. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it doesn't make you don't benefit from it, right? They're going to playing one of the toughest teams in college football, one of the best environments in college football. Kirby Smart's team is going to be ready to go. Look, we talked about it last week. Kate Klubnik had a lot of hype coming out of high school. I was on that train as well. I saw the tape. I thought he was unbelievable, and then when he went to college, it just hasn't panned out yet. I'm not giving up on him yet. I do think he can have a better year this year, but I am giving Clemson zero shot to win this game. Zero. So I will stand pat on that. And Trent, I'll let you go first, man.
Yeah, I mean, just to be blunt, yeah, I got Georgia winning here. Spread I think is 13 and a half.
I'm
Yeah,
taking
13
the
and a
over
half.
on that.
So I think that's a pretty heavy spread for a week one top 15 matchup. So look, I don't want to trash Clemson too much because they're still a talented team. They're still well
Agreed.
coached.
Yes.
I expect them to have one of the best defenses, not just in the ACC, but in the country. And they're not going to be an easy team to score on. But Klubnik, just like DJ, has really just not shown much since he's got to Clemson. It's hard to trust the guy to win you ball games considering what he's done so far. Granted, around him, he's still got Phil Maffa at running back. Like he's a very, very talented and veteran running back. But Georgia is Georgia. Carson Beck is a Heisman favorite. They have just a plethora of talent up and down the board at every single position, not to mention depth. I mean, and they're going to have that for the next decade, if not more. So Georgia's just a head over heel better team. Clemson's obviously not the same program it used to be. That might have something to do with the fact that they don't have a generational quarterback on their roster.
Two.
But Dabo is obviously going to get a little bite in the ass because he doesn't want to attack the portal, but He's still going to have a good defense. He's still going to have a tough team to beat. I expect Clemson to be a top two, at worst, top three team in the ACC. But Georgia is just it's so outmatched, so outmatched. It's hard to really give him a shot here.
Yeah, there's probably only three teams in the country that can beat Georgia right now. So,
Maybe.
not to discredit Clemson, they have a very good roster indeed. Alec, go ahead.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm looking at their depth chart. I don't think they have one transfer. Like, do they?
No, he doesn't touch the portal, refuses to do it.
No, so that's crazy just in today's world. But I think that Georgia's going to win this game by at least 20 points. Um, because it's Georgia, they're the best team in football right now. They're a team to beat. I got to see them, obviously against the hobbled and insufficient FSU team, but just kind of see how they're dogs, man. I mean, I know it's their freaking mascot, but like they're really the most aggressive, most elite players and program in college football. Clemson doesn't play any other teams like this on their schedule. It's not something that they're used to. They played FSU close last year. That game is at home for them, though. This game is at Ben's Stadium, and that's essentially a home game for Georgia. It's in Atlanta. Um, so I think they're going to really get handled. I think Georgia's going to win convincingly and kind of kickstart this amazing season they're about to have.
Yeah.
Having said that, having said that, I don't see them being too broken up over this loss as long as nobody gets hurt, nobody important. And I think that Clemson's going to have a really good year this year. Their team has only kind of grown. They have a really veteran offensive line. It's Klubnik's now junior year. Still have Phil Maffa. They're a really talented team. I think they're going to be, last year was a step down for them. And obviously, you could either go one or two ways, but I expect that they're going to kind of bounce back from last year. They still have a solid program. Um, but obviously they haven't been the elite program they were since they lost Brent Venables and um, forgot the Tony Elliott and I forgot the other guy's name, OC that they had when all those guys left the
Jeff
program.
Scott.
Yeah, just all the program changed when those guys left. But uh, Clemson fans, if you're listening, just take this one and move on. You're gonna have a good year.
There's no worries on this, man.
They also have Trevor. Georgia has. I forgot they got Trevor Etienne, which was just
Fair.
not fair. But I mean, look, you got to think that so long as Kirby Smart and the rest of the coaching staff doesn't get a criminal speeding uh, violation, that this team is a write-in to make certainly to win the SEC, but also to make it to the national championship.
Yeah, completely agree, guys. All right, let's get to another big game this week. That is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish going into Texas A&M, Aggie Land. That is probably the best game of the week, in my opinion. Um, it's kind of interesting here. Texas A&M's roster is pretty solid, but you have potential number one overall pick in Connor Wegman. A lot of people are high on this quarterback this year. And like I said, a lot of scouts that I trust have him as the number one overall quarterback in all of college football in the NFL at least to be the number one overall pick.
Wakeman?
Wegman,
Ooh.
yes. Some people really believe he's gonna be the number one pick. He's very talented. Uh, he has a huge arm. Um, but it's kind of funny because Elko is going against his former quarterback that he played with Duke last year. What's his name again? It's not hitting me.
Oh, Riley Leonard.
Riley
Riley
Leonard,
Leonard.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's Elko against his old quarterback Riley Leonard. It's going to be an interesting matchup there. Um, I'd be hard pressed to say, man. He Freeman hasn't showed me much at Notre Dame recently, but I actually think this is gonna be his first big win on the road in Aggieland. I think they're going to get it done. I just think their roster's too good this year. I think Notre Dame's finally going to make the playoff. I think they're going to do some big things this year, and that's my pick. Aggieland is a very fierce environment. Obviously, they're known as the 12th man for a reason. Would not shock me if A&M wins this game. What's the spread on that game, by the way? Do you know?
3.5.
Yeah.
3.5. Yeah, so they're telling it's gonna be really close. So yeah, I'm taking Notre Dame. I don't feel great about it, but that's my pick. Alec, what do you think, man?
So you got to remember that A&M is coming off of a terrible tragedy with the whole Jimbo Fisher thing. And obviously, Elko coming in was a good way to save face. I'd probably compare it to like Miami bringing in Manny Diaz after they got rid of Mark Richt. And I I think that Elko's going to do well like he did in Duke, and that he'll be able to build this program back. It's just hard for me to expect that they'll be ready for this game. Now, it's interesting you said that, and it's true. You know, he got first row seats to see Riley Leonard all season long last year. What he's great at, what makes him, scared, what freaks him out. So if anyone has an idea of how to handle this guy, it's
Yeah,
him.
yeah, completely
Guy
true.
he's a freak athlete. I mean, he's a playmaker, improviser kind of guy. And there's only so much you can do to prepare for a guy like that. I think that Notre Dame had a very impressive season last year. I've got to give props to Freeman, from when he came in and they lost their first two games. And since then, the program's been back, better than ever. And I'm predicting Notre Dame to have a really good year this year. And I think that they started by winning this game. If it, like I said, if it was Elko's second or third year, going back to what I was saying about the swamp, they have a home field advantage that's really powerful and at A&M, but um, too little time, I think, to get your whole team and program ready, to face Notre Dame week one in their first game of the season. So I'm picking Notre Dame to win this game, and I think that they'll cover 3.5 points as well.
Yeah. Trent?
So I think this along with the Miami game is probably the toughest pick of the week. This game I think is truly a toss up. To counter what Alex said about who knows Riley Leonard better than Mike Elko? Well, who knows Mike Elko better than Riley Leonard? You could say the same thing about Riley Leonard having a front row seat to Mike Elko's defense for an entire year, practicing against it for the most part. So I think that both teams will be prepared in this game. I know that Texas A&M lost Ruben Owens, their starting running back. I want to say for the season, he was a big part of their roster, a big part of the team last year. They do have guys to back them up, like Amari Daniels, who is from Miami Central, my man. But this is really tough. Like you said, I'm not really sold on Freeman. Um, and when there's games like this with very similar rosters, I think that Texas A&M's roster is actually very similar to Notre Dame in terms of talent. Um, I will usually give the toss up to either the home team or the better coach, and I think Elko is the better coach. And I know that, like Alex said, it could take a little bit to get kind of their feet under them, but at Texas A&M, I mean, Elko showed it all last year how he could get a job done even with an inferior team, maybe. So I like Texas A&M in this game and a complete toss up, and I think it's going to come down to the wire, but I'm going to go with Texas A&M.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, it's definitely a toss up. I don't feel confident about my pick at all, but I'm gonna stick with Notre Dame here, as I said earlier. All right, let's get to another game. That is Penn State going into West Virginia. And guys, I will not lie to you. I've in my head numerous times tried to pick West Virginia in my head. I wanted to do it so bad. I'm not gonna do it. Alec has made it known his dislike for the head coach of Penn State. Um, he puts him on Mount Rushmore, right? Um,
No one higher.
look, I'm gonna be honest, quite frank with you. This is the year that he needs to show something as a head coach. 12 teams get in this year. There's really no excuse for him not to make it. I will even go as far to say that if he does not make the playoff this year, there's a pretty good chance he's probably getting fired. Um, he needs to win. It starts week one. It's a very tough game. I'm going to pick Penn State. I don't feel confident about it, but I think they'll pull it out. But I think this game's going to be a lot closer than people think. I think the spread's 8. Would not shock me if it's a field goal game. With that said, I am taking Penn State, but I don't feel too great about it. Trent, what do you think, man?
I'm with you. I never really pondered what would happen if Penn State did not make the playoff. Do I think he'll get fired? No.
If not, when, man? I mean, it's
Well,
like
but then yeah, that's the next question is if not when. So he's consistently winning 10, and it's really hard to justify a coach that's winning 10 and every year and you still fire him. Obviously you want to get to that next level, but you can only get so much better. Obviously we you know how me and Alec feel about Franklin, but to be honest, considering the landscape of the Big Ten, I'd say it's likely he does not make the playoff this year. But for this game, I agree with you. I think that West Virginia in Morgantown, games in Morgantown, this game will be closer than people think. I'm not obviously not sold on Penn State at all, even though I do think they're a better team. I'm going to pick them to win, but I think that West Virginia covers the spread. I think this is a one possession game, potentially a field goal game. I know Drew Alar is the quarterback for Penn State, but I'm not sold on him. I don't love him. I mean, I don't know why you would be. So um, I think West Virginia's a little sneaky, especially considering the games in Morgantown. Like, and Alec be the first one to tell you those guys in Morgantown go absolutely ballistic. So it's gonna have they're gonna have a good home field advantage. I just think at the end of the day, Penn State's talent and their roster is a little more overwhelming. Um, but I think this will actually be a good game and one to watch.
Yeah. Not much to do in West Virginia, man. So that's obviously a packed house up there. Alec, go ahead, man.
Yeah, so Morgantown is one of the top five party schools in the country is West Virginia University. They got a rowdy bunch over there. It's one of the sleeper environments in college football, and that'll definitely be a factor. My concern is I don't think this game is as much about Penn State and Franklin as it is West Virginia and Neil Brown. Neil Brown is a guy who was had the fans calling for his head last season until they turned it around and they won like 4 or 5 out of the last 6 or 7. Finished the season pretty strong, so you're hoping that they can carry that momentum into this season. Um, the problem with the way that their teams have looked over these last couple of years when Neil Brown has been the head coach is they're prone to start the season off slowly and look sloppy and figure it out later on in the season. And they've had a couple of big wins over these last couple of years, but otherwise they've just kind of beat teams that they're supposed to. Haven't had any super wild upsets with maybe a few exceptions. I know they beat a decent UCF team last year. They beat Baylor last game of the season before the bowl game. They beat a hobbled TCU. It's like, they've been able to do okay in the Big 12, but you're talking about a Big 10 team here. Penn State's still a great program, and they're loaded with talent. They've recruited decently relative to West Virginia's recruiting, and I think that overall they're just the better team. So I like Penn State. You know, 8 points sounds about right. Could be a touchdown, could be more. But it's just so hard because the Mountaineers are a fun team to pick in college pick them, and they're on it this week, and I'm really inclined to
Mhm.
pick them. But I think I could save myself some stress and just go ahead and pick Penn State on this one as well. So I think we're all on the same page there.
Yeah, it's definitely shaky to say the least. I think they'll pull it out, but it's gonna be tough, man. All right, let's get to another interesting game here. A couple more picks, and we're on the road here. That is Colorado and North Dakota State. Um, guys, look, Dion's made a lot of noise this off season, and they have their social media names on the back of their jerseys, the whole 9 yards, right? They talk a lot. Quite honestly, man, I think they are one of the most overrated teams in college football. Uh, I would say if they finish 7-6. That would be pretty good for them. I know Shadir Sanders is a very good talent. I know Deion Sanders was took college football by storm last year, the first couple of weeks. But looking at their roster and the amount of transfers they have, I just don't think it's realistic they're going to win more than 8, 9 games. Um, with that said, this game's in Colorado. I will not lie to you. I don't know much about North Dakota State football other than Carson Wentz and a couple other football players went there
Uh-huh.
over the time. But I do expect Colorado to win, but I do think they're going to have a shaky season to say the least. Alec, go ahead, man.
Well, so my understanding is that North Dakota State is like the best team in the FCS, right? More or less. They won like multiple championships.
Are they still Division two?
The best FCS program in the history of FCS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Period.
Okay. So I would compare that to like an Appalachian State before they came into FBS one.
Uh,
And yeah, that's a team that comes in to any pretty much any stadium and puts up a fight. And I'm expecting the same this game. I think it's going to come down to the whoever has the ball last or whoever, scores last is going to win this game.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me, and I can imagine it's even harder for the Colorado fans, or even more so the players, to kind of not listen to the media distractions. They've had a lot of attention, bad attention over this off season and this preseason. Some bad articles, Dion in the press conference not wanting to talk to CBS because they wrote a bad article about
Yeah, I
him.
saw that.
And, a lot of the criticisms, there's a lot of people that were in support of Colorado, and there's very few of them now. So when you say they're one of the most overrated teams, I know that people have their eyes on them because they're a fun team to watch, but I don't think many people are expecting a lot out of them after the reality check that was that Oregon game and everything after last year. So I think it's going to come down to the wire either way. Either team can win this game. It's like I almost don't want to pick a winner because I really don't know. Um, I just, I know that Colorado's at home. They still have Shadur and they still have Travis Hunter and, good running back, good receivers. And maybe that'll be the difference. So I'll pick Colorado, but I think it'll be like a game-winning field goal or it goes into overtime or it's like going to be a bad look for them, but I could see them pulling it off and Dion going crazy in the press conference. So we'll see.
Yeah, I can't wait for him to say, "I told you, man, you better get us now because we coming." After he said that last year, he's
Yeah.
gonna. But go ahead, Trent.
so I am like, I love North Dakota State football. I like always for years. Like I probably since Wentz. I think Wentz kind of put them on the map, but they were good before Wentz. But I
Trey
love
Lance went
North
there too,
Dakota.
by the way. I forgot. Yeah.
Trey Lance went there. Yeah, I mean they are a great football program. They produce talent. Like they are good, man. And if you look at their schedule in recent years, you'll notice that they do not play Power Five teams really. I don't think they have in maybe the last 6 or so years. The reason why I think that is because nobody wants to play them. Why would a Power Five team want to play the best FCS team historically speaking? They don't win every year, but they are great every year in the FCS. Why would you want to play them and potentially risk a loss? Because teams know that they're going to bring their A game. They're going to bring it on game day. So this is a test for Colorado. I mean, obviously we know how talented they are, well, or can be with Sanders, with Travis Hunter. And don't get me wrong, I think Sanders is good, and I think Travis Hunter is a top 5 draft pick at receiver or corner. It doesn't matter. He's that good. But I don't care. I think Colorado is super dysfunctional. I think that starts at the top with Dion. I don't trust what he's doing there. I don't believe in what he's doing there. I think that there's something fishy going on in Colorado. There's just so much going on this offseason. Doesn't matter what it is. So just you could smell how fishy it is. So I I don't love Colorado. I know that they're a more talented team, but I mean, look, Colorado played Colorado State last year. Colorado State was not a good football team, and they should have. They were just overwhelmingly more talented. They should have blown them out. And that game, they came down to last possession. They probably should have lost that game.
No, they
It
should
came
have.
down to the
Yes.
final play. Shador won that game.
Then you got the
So,
famous watch celebrations. So
correct. So it doesn't matter if the opponent is inferior, especially on paper, because maybe North Dakota State is inferior on paper, but North Dakota State is a better matchup than Colorado State was. I know it's in Colorado. I know it's going to be loud. I'm picking North Dakota State to win this game. I like what they do, and I don't like what Colorado does. You can say that's vague, whatever, but I love North Dakota State. They're gonna play hard. They're gonna give Dion fits. Granted, Dion doesn't really coach, but it's not gonna be an easy game for Colorado, and I think ultimately I'm sorry, North Dakota State wins.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you on that pick. I will say this, man. North Dakota State has really produced some real NFL talent. Christian Watson went there too. I mean, they have real players that play there. So, it's definitely an intriguing game to say the least. Based off what you guys told me, it would not shock me at all now if North Dakota State wins that game. So I'll definitely tune in for that one. All right, guys. Let's get into two more games, and that is it. I want to talk about this one really quick. That is LSU and USC. We talked a lot about Lincoln Riley. Look, we all know Brian Kelly is one of the best coaches in college football.
No,
Uh,
depends who you ask.
um, safe to say he cannot win the big game, right?
No, he cannot.
But look, he had a Heisman quarterback last year. Quite honestly, you have really two Heisman quarterbacks that left at USC and LSU. Quite honestly, I have no idea what to expect from USC. Don't know if they're going to be great. Don't know if they're going to be bad. It's really big. We've attacked the coach a lot, but quite honestly, guys, what is your expectation for this game? Alec, I'll start with you.
So LSU obviously has lost their last two season openers. Just so happened to be the Florida State, but we'll leave that in the past. Both teams are kind of in an interesting situation. They both lost their Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, so that's a big deal. Big hole to replace. And I think that both coaches are, will respect each other. They are respectable coaches. I criticize Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley plenty. Um, and especially Lincoln Riley in big games, I think more so than Brian Kelly. Um, I played with USC in my college football online dynasty. They got this receiver, Zachariah Branch. He's pretty good. But their quarterback, Miller Moss, is supposed to be the future. And, you know, it's going to be a step down from Caleb, obviously. He's a generational talent. And then on the other end, who does LSU have? Nussmeyer? Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nussmeyer.
Nuss! And he's bounced around. Uh, Defensively, though, in these last 2 years, in the first game of the season, FSU did just fine running right through the LSU defense. Even in the New Orleans game, we were up by like 14 points until we blew the lead and almost blew the game. Unfortunately, blocked the extra point. But there's a tendency. And Brian Kelly, when he was in Notre Dame, they came to FSU. We were a shit team, and they're five in the country, and we took them to overtime. So it's like a recurring trend with Brian Kelly and not having his team ready early in the season, and then going on and finishing really strong and competing for a conference championship and beating Alabama like they did 2 years ago. Um, so I don't. I think I'm going to pick USC. This game is in Nevada, and you're talking about say what you want about him and his defenses, but offensively, Lincoln Riley is one of the best minds in college football, and I think I give him the nod on the coaching uh, matchup.
Yeah.
Um, so I just don't see LSU's offense being as explosive as it was last year. So that'll kind of level out USC's maybe average defense. And I just think the game's in Vegas. A bunch of people from LA will go. I'm sure a bunch of LSU fans will travel. They travel well, but I like USC to win this game.
Mhm. With that said, I'm going to quickly make my pick. I am taking LSU for the main reason of Harold Perkins. That guy is a defensive beast. He's a menace on the field. Quite honestly, man, I think the Achilles heel for Lincoln Riley has been his defense the last 5 years. You just can't find
Yeah,
that coordinator. And for me, that is the reason why I'm picking LSU. Lincoln's Riley team could never stop a nosebleed. I mean, the guy, year in, year out, I truly believe that his defense has cost him two national championships. Um, he just cannot figure it out. It's unbelievable. I mean, this guy has had the same Achilles heel for the last 5 years. Can't find the coordinator, can't find the player, just cannot figure it out. Obviously, we know his offense is elite. I agree with you, Alec. He's arguably the best offensive mind in college football, but with that said, I'm taking LSU. I think it's gonna be the same story this year too. I don't care who he hires at this point. I think the writing's on the wall defensively. They will, in my opinion, will not figure it out as long as he's there. Um, so with that said, you can score, but you got to stop him too, man. So with that said, I'm taking LSU.
Yeah, this is Battle of the Bums. No doubt, Battle of the Bums. I don't like Kelly. I don't know who I dislike more. If I'm being honest.
I think I dislike Brian Kelly
I
more.
think I dislike Brian Kelly more, but that's only because of his lack of
Not
accountability.
as a coach, I just as a
It's his post
person.
game comments. Yeah, there's things that I'm just that aren't suitable for this
The
pod that
the
I'm not
the, the
going to
fake
say.
accent that Southern
Yeah,
accent.
yeah. It's just there's a lot of things I could say that's just not
But saying
appropriate.
he's going to execute his whole team. Or how about when they come into the press conference and he's like, "Good morning. How come you guys didn't say good morning?" Like he's the biggest asshole. Anyway, Brian Kelly, if you're listening, good luck. Just
So I know Alec talked about Brian Kelly coming out week one against Florida State, his team not being ready, and FSU was able to move the ball pretty easily. And while I'm not disagreeing with that, that was also against FSU, which is obviously a good team. Whereas in week one last year, USC played San Jose State, and they gave up 28 to San Jose State. Um, so we can go on and on about Brian Kelly, but Lincoln Riley's defenses are just historically, notoriously dreadful. I mean, last season they gave up more than 40 points 5 times. Like, that's ridiculous. He gave up 52, 49, 48, 41, 41. They don't play defense.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's just the Achilles heel. It's hard to win when you have that kind of defense, and I don't see any signs of improvement, any signs of life. I don't know how they plan on improving that defense over the next few years, but and that's not to say that USC is not going to be good offensively because I think they are. I think Miller Moss is a great quarterback. We saw it in the bowl game last year when Caleb Williams sat. He was great. They beat Louisville. He had a great game. But on the other side, LSU. Nussmeier did the same thing in his bowl game when Jalen Daniels said. I think he had almost close to 400 yards. I think he had 3 touchdowns. He was great too. So I'm going to pick LSU. I think they're a more well-rounded team, better coached team, especially on defense. Like you talked about Harold Perkins earlier. Even though I think he was a little disappointing last season compared to what we thought he was going to be from the year prior. I still think he's an ultra talented first round pick. And especially if he plays his potential, he's probably one of a top 5 defensive player in the country if he does what we know he can do. So I'm going to pick LSU here. Uh, I'm curious to see how USC's offense performs without Caleb. Alec mentioned Zachariah Branch earlier. He is a beast. I think he's a future first round pick. I think he was a top 3 player in the country coming out of high school.
Yeah.
He's showing everybody why. But I like LSU here. I think the defense is the difference, and LSU wins that battle.
Yeah. All right, let's get quickly to our last game here. That is Boston College, FSU. You know, he's been hiding a little bit, but I will say this. I had no idea until about 10 minutes ago because I completely forgot. But Bill O'Brien is the head coach for Boston College. Uh,
Billy,
he's bringing his
Leo.
NFL roots to Boston College. FSU is traveling 13 hours back to Tallahassee. I believe this game's in Tallahassee, right?
yeah,
It's
Um,
on Monday.
it's on a Monday. Yeah, correct. I'm not going to get too cute here. I'm picking FSU to win, but I thought it was hilarious that Bill O'Brien is coaching Boston College. Jeff Hafley left that job to be a coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. That should tell you something right there. Boston College has had some elite NFL players over the years, like Luke Kuechly and stuff. But with that said, I would be very surprised if FSU doesn't beat Boston College by at least 14 points. So I don't know what the spread is, but that's my
I think it's
opinion.
17 and a
Like
half.
Yeah, so there you go. Um, Alec, quickly, what are your thoughts, man?
quickly, I'll say that Boston College almost beat us last year. They had that game at home. Obviously, it was their red bandana game. So that's like the biggest game of the year for them. Billy O is a Massachusetts guy. He's born there. I'm sure he grew up being a BC fan, so this means a lot to him to be this coach. And Hafley did a great job. They have at quarterback Thomas Castellanos. He threw for 300 yards and ran for 100 yards against us last year. Uh, and our defense was much better last year than it looked in week 0. So I think that you got to take BC plus 17 and a half here, just based off of what you saw last week. It's a big, big game for FSU. Um, we it's pretty much a season defining game, I would say.
I agree.
Where if we come in and blow them out, okay, we responded, we're ready to roll, we're ready to face whoever. If we come and we fight and we win a close game, the season is not going to be looking good. Probably not going to be a playoff team.
Yeah.
They lose this game, season's over, and potentially everything crumbles. So you got to hope that we win this game and win it convincingly. I don't know what fell apart last week, but I think that the credit is due to Brent Key and Georgia Tech on a defense and offensive play calling was phenomenal. But now we don't have any tape on what Bill O'Brien's going to be running, and they have tape on what we're going to be running and exactly what they need to do to stop us. So I think that gives them little bit of help. So I'm going to pick FSU to win this game. We're playing at home. Supposedly, I don't know if the game's sold out, but it's going to be a packed stadium.
Yeah.
I would really, really hope so.
About
I
10, 15,000 less seats, I think now because we're doing renovations. Like a lot of the stadiums shut off so that we won't be as loud. That could be a factor. Um, I just don't know. I'm gonna pick FSU to win. If we lost, I'd be angry.
might have to
But
burn that
after
jersey.
what I saw last week, I wouldn't be super shocked.
I will say this, Alec, real quick. I am taking the over on the spread. I think last week's game they're going to come out with vengeance and just be more motivated than ever to play this game and bring out all the cards. Now, I will say this: if they lose this game, I think DJU might hit the portal again and go to another team midway through the season. Um, Obviously, I'm joking, but quick thoughts, Trent, before we go.
Yeah, I mean, if they lose that game, DJU's not in the portal. He's going to be working at Circle K. But look, it's difficult and it's unfortunate for Florida State because they're starting off the season playing two ACC teams. That's very unusual. You obviously usually start the season with three or four non-conference games, which means that if you lose the first couple or if you don't or you struggle, it's okay. You're not even in conference yet, and you can kind of make up your ground in conference. That's not the case here. This is obviously a must-win game for Florida State because they're already 0-1 in conference play. You don't want to be 0-2. If you become 0-2 in conference play, it's a 99% chance you're out. You're not making the conference championship and more than likely not making the playoff. That being said, Florida State is still a superior team to Boston College here. Uh, Thomas Castellanos has obviously maybe not talked about enough, but he's a very dynamic quarterback and can give teams a lot of problems. We saw it against Florida State last year. Um, and Boston College historically gives Florida State the fits, but this game's in Tallahassee. Florida State has a ginormous chip on their shoulder and a lot to prove. This is not the red bandana game. Florida State is a just way more, just outmatches Boston College up and down. I would expect them to be much more prepared for this game. I know that Boston College has some film now that they can look at, and that well, that not be the case for Florida State, but I don't think it'll matter. That also, though, another interesting note is that this is the return of Trayshawn Ward to Tallahassee and Doak Campbell Stadium. Trayshawn used to play at Florida State. He was their starter at Florida State last year before was it last year, 2 years ago, before Benson took over. But uh, Ward was one of the starting running backs for Boston College, so that'll be an interesting watch. But I like Florida State here. I will say I do think Boston College covers the spread of 17 and a half, but I still expect Florida State to win this game. And if they don't, I will be thoroughly shocked and surprised if
I think
Florida
we
State
all are.
cannot pull
Yeah.
this out. So give me Florida State. I like them to start the season 1-1.
Yeah. Agreed. Alec, any last words before you go?
Nope, I got nothing else to say.
Yeah, don't
All
be
right,
one to
man.
mention.
Week 1 is here. I cannot wait. Bunch of good games. With that said, guys, we'll be back here for week 2 to discuss what happened last week and go forward through the whole season. And guys, it's finally here, man. Can't wait to watch.
Go Canes. Hopefully, we're both not in shambles by the time we come back here.
All right.